College of Cardinals met at the Vatican on Tuesday and decided on Saturday, April 26, as the date for Pope Francis' funeral and burial. In Palestine, authorities reported a new Israeli attack on a residential complex killed 19 civilians in the city of Khan Yunis. And Russian President Vladimir Putin met with the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq Al Saud, who is in Moscow on a state visit. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The College of Cardinals met at the Vatican on Tuesday to debate plans for the funeral of Pope Francis and the conclave to elect his successor. Around 60 cardinals reportedly participated in the first meeting and decided on Saturday, April 26 as the date for the pontiff's funeral. His body will be previously transferred to St. Peter's Basilica on April 23rd for a 3-day-long public wake. Protocol calls for a state ceremony followed by a simple burial in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore as Francis had ordered in his will. The coffin will be buried in the Pauline Chapel with no inscriptions beyond his name in Latin. The cardinals haven't set a date for the conclave to elect Francis' successor, but the current norm suggests it could begin between 15 and 20 days after his passing. And after Pope Francis' passing, nuns at the Vatican highlight the Supreme Pontiff's efforts in advocating during his tenure for women to have greater roles in the governing church, including in high-ranking positions.
He starting to get the responsibilities to the women in the church. An example, for the first time in the history, he entrusted a prefect to a sister of the missionary of Consolata, and then the governor, to lead the Vatican governor, he entrusted to a sister. From there, we can understand that the women, we also have the voice to contribute.
He care with the women. That before less people talk about the women, but now more with the thanks to this Pope that he raise up the women, that the women not live outside at the side, but need to involve with the life of the church. And not only in the church, but in the society.
And this Tuesday, the people from Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, Pope Francis' homeland, paid the late pontiff several tributes. This way, the landmark obelisk became the main stage for a mapping that projected the image of the Pope together with the phrase, "Francis, the city prays for you." In addition, the Galileo Galilei planetarium was dyed yellow as a symbol of mourning, reflecting the deep sadness, solidarity, and pride felt by the nation after the departure of Jorge Bergoglio. The ceremony not only celebrates the life and work of the spiritual leader, but also invites reflection and unity in a period of national loss. In this regard, during her morning press conference, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum highlighted Pope Francis' influence on reforms within the Catholic Church and his critical view of neoliberalism and consumerism.
Es un pensamiento humanista.
His was a humanist way of thinking. Very progressive, let's put it like that. In the sense of it was always approaching the humblest, the poorest, the forgotten, calling the whole world to the construction of peace. Also his criticism of neoliberalism, consumerism, and the recovery of austerity values in his own person and in general in the Catholic Church.
Su propia persona y en general en la Iglesia.
Activists and people of the world commemorate International Earth Day amid climate crisis warnings affecting several countries. Environmental groups have issued numerous warnings and campaigns globally and in the United Nations to raise awareness of the climate changes that have caused devastation in many countries. In Cuba, authorities are fighting forest fires in Pinar del Rio amid a prolonged drought and a complex weather condition. Meanwhile, in Mexico, efforts are progressing to extinguish more than 100 fire outbreaks in the country's forest areas. And in Australia, the emergency services report at least 7 deaths during a storm in the city of Sydney. In this sense, they call for reflection to preserve the ecological balance and promote sustainable development. We now have a first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. During his program, Con Maduro Más, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, accused his counterpart in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, of being a serious and systematic violator of human rights after confessing to the kidnapping of 252 Venezuelan migrants in a maximum security prison. This comes in response to the Nayib Bukele's recent proposal to exchange the Venezuelan migrants kidnapped in El Salvador for people condemned for terrorist acts and corruption in Venezuela. In this context, Maduro denounced a systematic violation of human rights against the people of Venezuela and the complicity of the far right in support of these aggressions, demanding guarantees and the immediate release of the Venezuelan nationals. The Venezuelan head of state also denounced Bukele's actions against his own people, highlighting his repressive, persecutory policies and violations of due process, stating that justice will be served for the crimes of his counterpart. And in El Salvador, social movements condemned the proposal of President Nayib Bukele to exchange kidnapped Venezuelan migrants in a maximum security prison in that country. They also described as hypocritical the president's affirmation that in his country there are no political prisoners. From San Salvador, our correspondent Roberto Gopresa with the details.
The organizations that make up the Popular Resistance and Rebellion Bloc raised their voices in condemnation of President Nayib Bukele's proposal to use imprisoned Venezuelan migrants as a bargaining chip.
We have strongly repudiated the cynicism of the Bukele regime, who in a desperate attempt to wash its image before the international community has ended up accepting that it is holding Venezuelan citizens hostage publicly on its X account, an alleged prisoner exchange between Venezuela and El Salvador. This act is nothing more than a propaganda maneuver to hide its own repressive and criminal policy against the Salvadoran people.
No más muerte, no más minería, y por eso nuestros compañeros están capturados.
This social movement affirms that in El Salvador, there is persecution of opponents and political prisoners.
Historical leaders of the Salvadoran left, persecuted for their legacy of revolutionary struggle, as in the case of Eugenio Chicas, members of social organizations such as Fidel Zavala, Atilio Montalvo, Pepe Malara, and other unionists. Environmental activists such as the Defenders of Cabanas imprisoned for opposing mining and neoliberal plundering. Journalists and critical communicators silenced for denouncing human rights violations.
Críticos silenciados por denunciar las violaciones a los derechos humanos.
The social movement regrets that El Salvador is adopting a strategy of interference.
We regret and condemn that these acts of interference continue to be repeated. It is also regrettable the vocabulary used by President Bukele when referring to the government of Nicolás Maduro, of Comrade Nicolás. This is really a smokescreen.
Realmente esta es una cortina de humo.
The FMLN also took a firm position. The Secretary General of the party considers that this is a maneuver previously planned by the global ultra-right.
¿Por qué razón Why have only Venezuelans been brought to the Secot prison in El Salvador? Why not Peruvians? Why haven't they deported people from other countries? And this is precisely the question we are asking ourselves at the international level. It is a plot prepared by the fascist right wing of Venezuela, by Marco Rubio, by the US, globalists, against countries that do not bow their heads before the pretensions of Donald Trump.
Officially, the Supreme Court of Justice and the Salvadoran Prosecutor's Office have not responded to the request made public on Sunday by the Venezuelan prosecutor, who asked for details of the migrants imprisoned more than a month ago.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
And this Monday, the Ministry of Health of Colombia announced a health emergency decree as a priority protection measure due to the rise in yellow fever cases. This way, per the document, people from 9 months onwards without age limit must be vaccinated if they live or are going to travel to risk areas. Vaccination will be carried out through the implementation of mobilization and intensification and follow-up strategies depending on the risk category in which the municipality is located. The decree also entails that authorities must establish health control posts, which will include vaccination services, and must require travelers to present their vaccination card. In other news, a Colombian judge orders an investigation of cyclist Lucio Herrera for his possible involvement in the forced disappearance of 4 farmers. The request was issued by Judge Maria del Pilar Bocarejo in the department of Cundinamarca, where Herrera was born and resides. According to a document, the judge based her decision on an anticipated sentence related to one of the paramilitaries implicated in this case. According to the sentence, the criminal pointed out that Herrera, during the investigation carried out on October 11, 2022. This testimony has led the authorities to consider the need to investigate further the possible participation of the cyclists in these serious events, which have left a deep mark on the local community. And in Cuba, the government officially inaugurated the 15th Health for All Trade Fair as part of the International Convention Cuba Health 2025. Government authorities officially opened the trade fair at the fairgrounds of the Convention Center in Havana. 117 foreign companies and 112 national companies participated in the exposition. During his speech, the Vice President of the Republic, Eduardo Diaz, categorically denounced the criminal unilateral measures imposed by the United States on the Caribbean island, which increased the blockade of the health sector in Cuba. And in midst of the brutal escalation of violence in Haiti, the Special Representative of the United Nations warns of the point of no return to which the country is headed. The erratic policies imposed by the United States and Canada, with the backing of the Organization of American States, have plunged Haiti into an unstoppable spiral of violence. The UN's quarterly report, presented to the Security Council on Monday by its Special Envoy Maria Isabel Salvador, affirms that the country could drift into imminent collapse and requests immediate additional support to the United Nations. Furthermore, the report called for immediate additional support to the police to contain the fall of Port-au-Prince, the nation's capital, from the domination of criminal groups. Like this, we have our second break coming up. Remember, you can visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. I found your break and we're going to be right back. Welcome back. Palestine authorities reported that a new Israeli attack on a residential complex killed 19 civilians in the city of Khan Yunis. The preliminary report detailed that 10 children were among the victims. On the other hand, the authorities specified that bombardments were registered to the northeast of Rafah and against a tenth of displaced people in Jabalia. The Zionist army violated the ceasefire agreement by reactivating its criminal attacks on the coastal enclave on March 18th this year. Gaza authorities announced on Tuesday that the number of people killed by Israel has risen to more than 51,000 and at least 117,000 injured since the beginning of the genocide perpetrated by the occupation in Gaza. Also in Palestine, health authorities say more than 600,000 children are at risk due to Israel's blockade of vaccines in Gaza. Authorities added that children are at risk of permanent paralysis and chronic disabilities if polio vaccines are not provided, as deliveries have been suspended for 40 days. The health ministry denounced that Israel's restrictions are slowing down strategies to move forward in polio prevention efforts. Doctors point out that children in Gaza also face the lack of necessary nutrition as well as the lack of drinking water, which endangers children's lives. And the president of the government of Spain, Pedro Sánchez, announced an investment for security and defense spending. During a meeting with the local media, Sánchez pointed out that the Council of Ministers approved an industrial and technological plan to be sent to Brussels to be evaluated by the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The president said that the additional investment will be 10,471 million euros to allocate 2% of the gross domestic product by the end of 2025. The head of state reiterated that the increase in spending will not be related to the financing of social items, nor will it represent an increase in taxes. And Russian President Vladimir Putin met with the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq Al Said, who is in Moscow on a state visit. This is their first ever meeting between the two heads of state. Prior to that, they had spoken on the phone in March 2023, the first high-level bilateral contact between the two countries since the establishment of diplomatic relations. Both leaders pledged to work to enhance cooperation in different sectors. Putin also welcomed Oman's contributions to the negotiating process between Washington and Tehran around the Iranian nuclear dossier.
We strive to establish distinguished and beneficial relations between us that serve the people of both countries. Our meeting this morning was with a group of businessmen who are genuinely interested in developing this relationship. There are many fields of cooperation, whether in energy, agriculture, or trade, and many of them have already begun opening offices and exchanging visits.
And in this context, the Russian president extended the Sultan an invitation to an upcoming summit between the League of Arab States and Russia.
We plan to hold a summit between Russia and the Arab countries this year. Many of our friends in the Arab world support this idea. Your Majesty, if you find the time, we would be delighted to see you at this summit between the League of Arab States and Russia.
And on Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba announced that Tokyo will not give in to the U.S. demands to reach an agreement on the tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. The Prime Minister stressed that if the country gives in to Washington's conditions, they will not be able to guarantee national interests. Japan has been working to protect agriculture and other key development sectors. Tokyo prepares its strategy to face a second round of negotiations before the end of April, after representatives of the two countries held initial talks in early April. Senior U.S. officials have called tariffs on agricultural imports to Japan, including rice, unfair trade barriers. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.